just going to take a minute and breathe for a second, okay? Breathe with me. It's cool. Go ahead. Just pause. I have been running around from place to place and thing to thing since I hit the door. It's just nice to stop for a second. God doesn't always intend us to be running around and doing all kinds of things. Sometimes what God intends for us is just to pause and to breathe, to rest. This morning, as we have lit our newest candle on the Advent wreath, the candle of joy, like last week with the candle of peace, I want to spend some time unpacking what joy is. What is the action of joy that we're meant to be engaging in during this time of waiting? We talked about last week that we're not just meant to light the candles and look at them and sit. We're meant to do. We're meant to be taking action. There's things that we do in the midst of a time of waiting. But before we get to what that action might be this morning, I do want to make sure that we're on the same page, that joy and happiness are not the same thing. They are separate. They are two different things. Happiness is a feeling that can come and go, and is built on situations that are happening to us or around us. Joy, though, is a state of being. It's a way to live that is not about our situation and circumstance. Happiness tends to be a little selfish. When we're doing what makes us happy, we are the primary center of our attention. And our happiness can come at the expense of others. It does happen, even if we don't want it to. Joy, while overlapping a little with happiness, for the most part, is selfless. Joy isn't about bettering our circumstance. We are not the center in joy. Joy is about finding meaning in a life regardless of circumstance or situation. Joy is how we live and engage in the world at all times. Now, as I'm sharing that, I do want to let you know there's nothing wrong with happiness. Don't hear that. Don't hear I'm saying don't be happy. Be grumpy. Happiness is okay. It's okay to seek out happiness. It's okay to do those things that make you happy. It's okay to be happy in general. Happiness is a God-given emotion, and God wants us to feel it. But what we're talking about this morning is that fulfilling our personal happiness isn't the action of joy that we're meant to be taking during the season of waiting. That's not what it looks like. Now, this is the part of it where you might ask yourself, what is the action of joy? And I'm pretending that you did, even though you did not. And we're going to look at Philippians this morning to find out the answer to that question. Before we look at the text, let me give you a little background on Philippians. Philippians is one of the books that we are pretty much sure, all biblical scholars pretty much agree, which is a rare thing, honestly, because they like to argue, but they do all pretty much agree that Paul actually wrote this particular book. The setting in which Paul writes from is prison. Scripture records Paul being in prison 4 times. In Caesarea, in Philippi, in Rome, and in Ephesus. Now, since he is writing to the church of Philippi, we can cross that one out. This is not when he was in prison there. That leaves the other 3, which means that this letter was written in a time frame between 55 and 61 AD. Based on context clues, the traditional view is that Paul wrote this from Rome. Now, as he writes to the church of Philippi, this letter was addressed to the first Christian mission that resulted in Paul's response to the Macedonian call in Acts 16. So this church in Philippi that he's writing to is the first Christian church established in Europe. There are many points to this letter to this church, but there is one unifying undercurrent, and that's joy. Paul uses some version of the word 16 times in this small letter. So it is here where we can find some of what we need to know about joy. It is here where we can look and see what is the action of joy. This morning we're going to be reading Philippians chapter 1, verses 12 through 18. I want you to know, beloved, that what has happened to me has actually helped to spread the gospel, so that it has become known throughout the whole imperial guard and to everyone else that my imprisonment is for Christ. And most of the brothers and sisters, having been made confident in the Lord by my imprisonment, dare to speak the word with greater boldness and without fear. Some proclaim Christ from envy and from rivalry, but others from goodwill. There are those that proclaim Christ out of love, knowing that I have been put here for the defense of the gospel. The others proclaim Christ out of selfish ambition, not sincerely, but intending to increase my suffering and my imprisonment. But what does it matter? Just this, that Christ is proclaimed in every way, whether out of false motives or true, and in that I rejoice. And yes, I will continue to rejoice. I had no idea the word proclaim was so hard for me to say. So what we see here is that Paul is writing from prison, and what he is doing is actually encouraging others to not get torn up and upset about it. As Paul writes from prison, while he's in prison, his thought is to write to others to give them comfort. And the first thing he tells them in verse 13 is that the whole imperial guard knows why he is in prison. Basically, they are hearing in some fashion the message of Christ through Paul's imprisonment. They need to know in the Greek, the word imperial was actually used as praetorium. This is why the traditional view is that Paul is in prison in Rome, because the Praetorian guards were Caesar's personal elite bodyguards. These elite guards were not regular battlefield soldiers. These elite guards were not stationed anywhere else. These guards were the best of the best, chosen because of their skill and commitment to the emperor. They were also the highest paid, so that way there would be no question of loyalty. Like I said, they didn't go out into battle. They actually didn't even leave the emperor's palace unless the emperor did. So there was no conceivable way that Paul would have had access to these men to share that gospel message of Christ, to tell them about Christ, if he wasn't in prison in the palace. Think about that for a moment. Paul wouldn't have had access if he wasn't in prison. Basically, we have Paul here talking about taking joy and finding the opportunity to share the gospel message with people he would not have been able to under normal circumstances. It's because he's in prison that he gets to do this. It's a fantastic point of view. I want to share with you, honestly, if I was in prison, don't think I would be like, what are the things I can do here that are awesome? I'd be distressed. I'd be anxious. I'd probably be wallowing in sadness and despair. And yet we have Paul here in Roman prison. I'm excited. I get to tell people about Jesus that I wouldn't normally see. And that's not enough, because then you check out verse 14. It says, because of Paul's imprisonment for Christ, other brothers and sisters are feeling more confident and are boldly proclaiming Christ. So what has happened to Paul is actually encouraged and emboldened others who may not normally be willing to share the gospel to do just that. And then further on in verse 15, there is another group of people that started to proclaim Christ. Granted, those people, we're told by Paul, aren't doing it out of love for Christ and others. They do it for ambition and personal gain. Basically, the idea that this proclaiming the gospel has become something for which fame is gained, and other people are wanting to be famous, wanting to be known. Just think for a moment. Paul's passion is to preach and to teach. Paul has been tapped by God to be the pastor to the Gentiles. Think for a moment. What's your biggest passion? You don't have to tell me, but think. Everybody got it? What if you were impeded from being able to do that? What if they were stopping you from being able to engage in that passion? And what if while you're being stopped from being engaged in that passion, you see a whole bunch of other people doing your thing? And not just people doing your thing because they love it, doing your thing because they want it for themselves, because they want to be popular, or they're getting some personal gain. How are you going to feel? I'm angry, honestly. That's where I'd be coming from. I can't do my thing, but other people can. And then there's these people who are doing it not even for the reason it should be done. I'd be hot. And here Paul makes this statement of, yeah, I know that's happening, but what do I care? Because whether they are saying it for the right reasons or the wrong reasons, the gospel of Christ is being preached just the same. People are hearing it just the same. Paul doesn't trash talk these people. He just says that what's important is Christ is proclaimed. And because of Paul's imprisonment, people are taking the opportunity that they would not normally and are proclaiming Christ for true and false reasons. But again, for Paul, it doesn't matter. It only matters Christ is proclaimed. In these verses, we see from Paul what the action of joy is. It's looking for opportunity in the midst of whatever is happening. I don't know if you've ever thought about joy from that point of view. I think often we do attach joy to happiness or to a feeling, or joy is what we find in singing, or joy is what we find in serving. But the overall thing behind joy is looking for opportunity. Looking for opportunity to love God and to love others. Looking for opportunity to proclaim Christ. looking for opportunity to share God with others. That's what joy is. That's our action of joy. That's what it should be. Looking for opportunity to fulfill that greatest commandment, to love God and to love others. And this is a joy that we're meant to live in daily. It's meant to be something that we have going on regardless of what is happening to us or around us. And this is one of the most important things I believe that we can do, especially as the world around us is looking right now. This week at Pint and Ponder and Coffee Talk, the topic was, what do God's people do with the news? As we sat around tables sharing and listening to each other and offering questions and thoughts and ideas, one thing became apparent. Many of us around those tables were hot. We were angry. We were mad at some of the things that we have seen going on around us. We were feeling despair or despondent about what was going on and how it was going on as we looked at the news happening around us and in the world. Has anybody been there with us around those tables? Is anybody there now? When you read the paper or watch the news, there's stuff happening that makes you mad, that you're distressed about, that you don't like to see happening, that it shouldn't be that way, that it riles you up in some way. If the answer is yes, then the question I have is, what are you doing about it? What are you doing with that anger? Like I shared with you before, that happiness is a God-created and God-given emotion. So is anger. It is meant to motivate us to do something. And I want to share with you this morning that something is never to stew in the anger. It's never to just sit in it and let it wash over us as we get more and more angry. For the people of God, it is meant to be something that motivates us, that pushes us to take action. That's what we're meant to take into this attitude of joy, to look for something that is an opportunity to love God and to love others in the midst of what has made us angry. It's not an easy thing. It's really easy to be angry and sit around a table in a brewery or in a coffee shop, removed from the things that are happening, and just be angry and say, there's nothing I can do. And yet that doesn't jive with what God calls us to do. See, it's not just anger that this works with. It is all of our emotions. Sadness, happiness, depression, fear, whatever we're feeling, God created and gave it to us to motivate us to action, to let us know something is wrong. Something is wrong in your life. Something is wrong in the world. Do something about it. And what we do as a people of God, as a people who are meant to live in joy, look for opportunities. Look for opportunities that come from these emotions and these situations. Look for opportunities to follow that commandment of loving God and loving others. That's what Paul has going on. Again, he was tapped by God to be the pastor to the Gentiles, that passion to teach and to preach, and yet he's stuck in prison. And others are getting to do what he most desperately wants to do. It would be easy for Paul to get angry, to wallow in that, yes? It'd be easy for Paul to be despairing and sad and hopeless. And yet instead what Paul does as a person of God, living in the midst of these things, maybe being angry, maybe being a little sad, he looks for opportunity. Paul's action doesn't end with just being angry or sad. He looks for opportunity to love God and to love others in the midst of what's going on. Now, as I share that with you this morning, you might be saying to yourself, well, that's Paul. I mean, Paul has all these things written about him. You know, we attribute a whole chunk of the Bible to Paul. What does this look like in our lives, though? I want to share with you what I had originally written in this sermon was an example of something that I had done. But as I read that, I was like, that's not really the answer that you need to hear. You don't need to hear what I've done. I will share with you, as I sat around those tables, there were things I was angry about. There was things I was mad about. And sometimes I have responded. I have stepped into that action of joy of looking for opportunity. But sometimes I have wallowed. But this morning, the answer that we're looking for isn't, what did I do? And the answer, honestly, isn't even what Paul did. I've given you Paul as an example. The answer to this question can only become from us. From what do we do? As I look in this room, as I see people on Zoom, we all have different ways that God has made us, yes? We all have different things that push and pull us. We all have different emotions that we might feel in response to things that are going on. So the answer is not just one pat answer of this is what some person did. The answer has to be you question yourself as you are feeling angry, as you are feeling despondent, as you are feeling hopeless, as you have these feelings. What do you do with them? In the midst of all the strife and chaos and suffering in the world around us, where are we looking for opportunity to love God and to love others? Where are we looking for the places that we can step in and to take action? In our anger and our sadness and our fear and our anxiety, where are we looking for opportunity to love God and to love others? Maybe some of you are right on it and you're into it. Awesome, please keep doing it. For the rest of us like me who sometimes get there and sometimes fail, ask yourself this question constantly. When you feel those emotions, I want to encourage you, stop. Ask God, what do I do with this? God, what's the opportunity? What is the thing that I can do with this feeling? What is the place where I can have this action of joy, of looking for opportunity to share you and to lift others up? Ask God to reveal it to you in case you can't see it. Also ask God to give you the strength to do it in case you see it and don't want to do it. The question I want to leave you with this morning as Lauren comes up to lead us in our last song, as we are here in this third week of Advent, in this season of waiting, is in the lives that we live, in the places that God has put us, in the world around us. Where is our joy? And what opportunities does it lead us to? This morning, as we have this song of response, do what God leads you to do. If it is to sing these words, sing these words. But if it is to sit and to ask yourself that question, if it is to seek out God and say, God, here is what I've got. What do I do? Do that. If you're not sure, but you think you want to ask somebody else, go ask somebody else. If you want to move and go give someone a hug and they're cool with it, give them a hug. If you want to sit and pray, this is your time with God. And I want to encourage you to respond as God leads. Don't worry about what anybody thinks about what you're doing. If God's leading you to do it, it is right. Do it. And so as we go into the song of response, if God is leading you to stand and to sing, please do. If God is leading you to do something else, please do that.